Feeling better?
Would be part of next week.
I just have a, didn't want to,
No, so we're good.
any hard issues.
No.
Can I start?
Huh?
Can I start?
Yeah, Tuesday.
Okay.
It's 5:26 up there.
No, it's
Is it 5:30?
Yeah.
5:30
That
on
clock
here.
is wrong.
Yeah,
Okay,
it's
go
good.
ahead and start then.
Okay, I hereby call this meeting to order. Thanks for being here and all that. Jim Facer will lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All our board members are present. There are a couple items on the, a couple of added items to the addendum. That's the state superintendent and Hvac proposed budget comparison, a board calendar, and an amended board meeting schedule for this year.
Dave, there's one more too. There's a Head Start waiver letter that is in your packets, just not on your app.
Okay, you got it. I would entertain a motion to approve the agenda with the addenda.
I move that we approve the agenda with the addenda.
Discussion, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, that motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the approval of the minutes. I would entertain a motion, or probably should I read the minutes, shouldn't I? Regular board meeting from February 11th, 2020. Executive session, student discipline, February 12th. Special meeting, RE bid and HR activity on February 26th. And executive session, student discipline on February 26th. I've entertained a motion to approve the minutes.
We approved the minutes as posted.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion is passed. Next on the agenda is the approval of the consent agenda, which includes authorizing the payment of claims, approving the supplemental financial information, and approving the human research activity. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the consent agenda.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? None, so the motion is passed. And recognitions are scheduled next month, and it's time for public comment, and I have not seen anybody in the public, so we'll move on. Let's see, students' reports are not there. Courtney, do you have anything to talk about? Okay, you probably do.
I'll just share a little bit of information with you. I won't do my whole report this time, but so as you all know, on Tuesday, March 10th, we passed, the voters in our community passed our school plant facilities levy. It couldn't have been timed any better, considering what we faced right after that. We didn't even really have time to celebrate that accomplishment. We rolled right into making plans for how we were going to address this coronavirus COVID-19 issue. Really Wednesday, we kind of set plans in motion for how we were going to communicate that. So I just really wanted to focus my report tonight telling you a little bit about how we've been in constant communication with our stakeholders about this really national pandemic. So our first message to staff, you might be surprised, was February 11th. From that period, on March 11th, we sent a letter through Infinite Campus to our parents, and also a staff letter. That email had resources that were sent to us from the State Department of Education. It really focused on preventative measures, good hygiene practices, and really emphasizing that in our schools immediately. We also sent that home to parents. We also immediately developed a web page where we could have a repository of information and tools and resources for parents and community members to go to that had the governor's website, coronavirus at idaho.gov, and the State Department of Education's website, as well as CDC information. And we've been consistently updating that as new developments have arisen. Last week, as you all know, as of Wednesday evening, once the NBA canceled and once churches started canceling, things escalated very, very rapidly. So our target was to keep our information flowing just as rapidly as that information was changing, which was quite difficult to keep up with that. We sent additional letters to staff and parents on March 13th and 14th. Those communications were all shared with local media. And then, as you know, last night, Dr. Howell made the recommendation to you with the resolution to do an emergency school closure. So following up to those communications, there were several things that we wanted to get out the door today to parents. Lots of questions about what we were going to do with our emergency food service, how we were going to address online learning or that continuity of learning as if it becomes necessary for us to extend that closure beyond our anticipated date of coming back on April 6th. So we sent a letter to the staff this morning kind of outlining those steps, planting the seed that they may need to come back Thursday, April 2nd, and Friday, April 3rd to do some additional planning if we need to roll out some online combination of, online resources and homework packets. We've been actively addressing concerns on social media. We were and I'm sure that Mr. Reed will talk about this later, but we were really addressing a lot of questions about when that food service would start. So I was really happy to be able to, by the end of day today, release to the public and release to the media that that food distribution will start on Monday, March 30th. And we've already had 387, almost 400 people share that information, and it just was posted about 4 o'clock today. Okay, right. And overwhelmingly the comments are very positive. Did you have a question?
No, I just was going to say it's on Facebook, and that's really great, because I had an email when I
Right.
got home last night from someone
Right.
asking.
It's on Facebook. I put it on Infinite Campus as a user, so when people log in, they'll see the notification. It's also on our coronavirus web page. We also, one of the other things, people are very worried about how that continuity of learning will continue even with this 3-week break that we're taking. And so our instructional coaches are so amazing. I'm really proud of being on this team today. I saw food service come together. I saw our instructional coaches come together to put immediately a list of resources that parents can access at home, even during this shorter term break, so that they can keep their learners engaged at home. So that's also on the homepage of our site. It's on the Corona site, and then it has its own dedicated page too. And there's just a plethora from every subject to every grade level of resources that people can access in the time being. And then another concern people have had are their seniors and what will happen with graduation. So we've been trying to address those questions as they come up. And really, I feel like my job is to set people's minds at ease, provide them the information they need so they can make the decisions to the best ability with the information at hand. So we've posted some information about ISU's on-campus early college program, what to expect for that, as well as those dual enrollment courses that we host at our own schools. Also, part of our communication today has been, in order for this to work, people have to keep their kids at home. So I'm trying to think of what we can do for these other businesses that serve children in our community, like Geronimo's and Outer Limits and Delita, who all chose that very hard decision for their families. It makes me very emotional to think that what our community is doing to pull together so that this decision is a meaningful decision for us. And they've all decided to close for the interim. And then, of course, we will meet again to discuss the week of March 30th, and we'll continue to roll out information to parents as we get new information and share timely, relevant, credible information. So, any questions?
I did see something funny on Facebook today about a parent posting a homeschool mother or something, and wanted to know if she could transfer one of her kids out for class.
I did not see that one.
A teacher had posted and said, we can all relate with.
Right, exactly. I saw one that said she has 3 students in homeschool, and they all got suspended for misbehaving, so she has the day off tomorrow. So I thought that was kind of cute. One other thing I wanted to share with you, our website, that coronavirus page in just the last 10 days has received over 20,000 hits. So people have definitely used that as a resource to get information. So that's all I have tonight. Thank you. Thank you.
Want to talk about the videos and how many times those were viewed?
The levy videos?
Yeah.
Not as many times as I,
Okay, then we
Oh.
won't talk about it.
but Kevin did send me those numbers, so thank you for reminding me. The levy videos,
I thought it was really good. I mean,
it was like
Broad-
1,200
yeah.
views.
How many?
1,200.
Yeah, that's.
Besides the 100 of times that we showed it
Figure
out
how
in the
many
community.
people had viewed it in all of our presentations. So
Right.
They didn't have to see it again.
Right, that's true. That's
Double
very true.
feature, you know?
And at six, we passed that levy at a voter passage rate of nearly 62%. I feel like that is a very strong vote of confidence, considering the current climate in our community for what we're doing as a district. So thank you all for what you do and for your support, especially through this. Just, we're in unprecedented, uncharted waters, so.
And you know, it was really worrisome to us because of, because of the fact that it was with a general election. You know, we've never had that before.
Right.
And then we had all the negative publicity about property taxes and with the assessor's office and things.
Right.
And so it was a pretty scary time, and I was just really pleased to see it pass.
Right, I think we all
And
were.
I think a lot of your efforts and your videos and the things that you all did here really helped that to happen.
Well, we
So,
definitely pulled together as a team and did more than 60 presentations and really,
Yeah.
got out there to share this information. And the
So-
positive things we're doing, even through this time, we're doing really positive things for our community. So
So that,
thank you for your support. Oh, and I sent you a link today. I copied you on the email. Let me make sure that I did that before I
for
leave
the
tonight.
survey.
For the survey
technology.
that we did for, we sent that out through Infinite Campus, also posted it on Facebook, to really pull together some data so we could make informed decisions moving forward should we need to. How many people have Wi-Fi, what sort of devices they have. So I will make sure that you were all copied on that email before I leave. Okay, thank you.
Committee reports. This is the next on the agenda. What happened with Judge Murray today?
I didn't,
Oh, I didn't go today.
There wasn't one today?
I don't think so.
I didn't get a reminder. I don't know.
All right, so, okay.
Normally, the secretary there sends us out a note.
Stop it. Lori? Okay,
On it-
quite a few items.
I know as we go through and do our routine ones, it's like, there's nothing routine about today, is there? So the 21st Century After School Program, their attendance up until this point was close to their goal, and they're at 93% regular attendance, which is really good. They were fully staffed, which is also good. And we should be hearing in the first part of April now is when they say we should be hearing about that grant. You'll notice in there the Idaho Food Bank Backpack Program information, 1,008 backpacks were distributed, and we did have CRWs coming today, loading up, distributing to families, and they were able to get like 3 weeks' worth of backpacks so that they could hand out to their families. And today was I'm not exactly sure how it all went. All the principals were over here in interviews today, and so we didn't have a lot of contact with them other than just through emails and all, but I know that they were very diligently trying to get those delivered to families who would be in need. So that we have a tremendous group of people who care about our learners. In your packet, you're going to find I'll give you some information first, and then you can look in your packet for the Head Start information. Just the ERSI report, the program's at full enrollment with 183 students. There were no withdrawals in February. On the wait list are 16 on the 4-year-old and 29 on the 3-year-old. Attendance daily average was 85.81%, 54% were due to illness. The chronic absenteeism, there were 41 severe, which is 20% and over. 40 were moderate, which is 10 to 20% of the day, and those numbers represent the program term to date. The program has 4 openings, one for a bus driver still, a dispatcher, a full-day classroom aide, and a family advocate. This past week, Louise Gill, who was the program specialist, and Patty Roberts, who's the financial management specialist from the Region 10 Head Start office, were on site on March 12th and 13th to assist the program with our facilities and our continuation application. So Mr. Vitale joined us, and they were able to answer lots of questions and to help guide us as we move ahead with some of the facilities that we're working on for replacement of the module that did burn. So they had some great guidance, and they rolled up their sleeves and worked really hard with the Head Start program and management staff and the rest of us there. Policy Council began the review process for the 2021 continuation grant application. They reviewed the annual plan and the selection criteria, and we'll meet again tomorrow, March 18th, to consider and review the approval for the continuation grant application and the budget waiver request, which I'm going to have Ms. Bray talk with you about those that are some of them are in your packet there and in your addendum.
Okay. Do you have the cheat sheet handy?
Do I have the cheat sheet handy? Okay, well.
If not, I'll go off the top. I can do it. You do that. Okay. So, there we go.
I do.
All right. With putting together, not only looking at the application for replacement for facilities, but also the continuation grant, the two ended up kind of influencing the other. So that's why more will be coming forward as we finalize everything, but we needed to get the advice from the regional office on how to move forward. So in the waivers, they did say that we could put it all into one letter, so one time and be done, but I want to make sure you understand what exactly is in there. So we have funding that we know is going to be in excess of what we'll be spending out this year. And I'm still doing those calculations. So for example, now that we're not doing any traveling, we have all of that training budget for out-of-state travel. And then we had some funds in personnel and fringe. So those funds we are asking to put into a category for facilities and construction into this existing budget year. So that's step one. So to do so, I have to make sure that the board would be okay for us to move monies into that new line item. Then we also have to make sure that you would be in approval for getting the new facility. We have to do a pre-application checklist, and part of that requires different input from architects, environmental survey, real estate agent, and many of them, while we'll ask them if they would be willing to donate their services to us, but in case they don't, we have to have I have to submit your approval for me to request the regional office to approve us to take those fees out of this current budget year. So that's what the second one is talking about. Then for those funds that we put into facilities construction, we will have to have your approval tonight to ask to do a carryover so that funding can be carried over to the next funding year. And this is the first time we've had to do such. But in doing so, that allows us to have a larger amount of funding to be able to put into the new facilities. So it'll stay with our program. We're just carrying it from one grant year to the next. The next three are the non-federal share waivers. So the first one is looking at this current budget year because of all that our program has gone through. We foresee not being able to generate the in-kind that we would need to match for this current budget year. So things like have classes closed for a while, and the other things that we're going to be facing now with not being in session. So we're doing that request. Then for the carryover from this year to next year, we also have to do a specific non-federal share request for that amount. And then they're just recommending to all programs to just go ahead and put a non-federal share waiver in front So during the continuation application, rather than waiting until later in the year, just because they're seeing more and more programs having the challenges of trying to meet that non-federal share, and in part because each year they rule certain things no longer eligible to be considered for non-federal share. So, things that we had to look at more carefully, for example, this year had to do with SPED services. And I had a little conversation with Dave at one time. So what personnel are paid out of SPED funds from the federal government, that we can't count, but what funds are paid for staff providing those services, but out of the state budget, that we can count. So you have to get really detailed on what we can and can't. And then lastly, the transportation waiver, and that one is just in case we're not able to find aides to ride on each of the buses, is what that waiver is for. And so far, we haven't had any takers. Anyone here ever want to volunteer? We'd love to have you ride the buses with us. But, I don't know if you have any questions over any of those.
If you don't have volunteers, does that mean you can't run the buses?
We can still run the buses.
Wait.
The waiver is to allow us to run the buses without the aides. And so they know that we are able to because of our dispatch system. So even though we're looking for a dispatcher, I do a lot of the morning dispatching. Our transportation coordinator does a lot of the dispatching. So we're in constant contact with our buses throughout their runs, and that's how we're able to use the waiver.
So consideration of the approval of the submission of the continuation grant and the waiver and the budget request will be asked of the board tonight. And then you'll get those as soon as they are, before she submits them, Ms. Bray will be sending them to you for your review. And I think we typically do this, they're due April 1st, which always, makes a little bit of a hardship there. Next in your packet, you're going to see that there's a letter where we ask, and you realize that we've been asking our Pocatello PCCS for several years now, and you'll see since October of 2014, to consider finding another authorizer. And so one of the things that we have to do is we have to be both in agreement that they'll be finding another authorizer, and they've said, well, we'll go, and they report on it, on what they're doing. And so I recently had a conversation with Dean Mindive, and they said that they'd been, asking ISU, and ISU finally gave them a definitive answer, which was a no, that they were not in a position at this point to become an authorizer. So knowing that we have been making this request for several years, they have gone to their board and asked them if they would be willing to pursue going to the Charter Commission. They are then in agreement. This letter here that you were asking for your approval today will be showing that our agreement for them to be seeking the Charter Commission as their authorizer. So that is in your packet.
Nicely written. Nice reminder.
Yeah.
Stay in the back.
Yes. Ms. Johnson does a nice job. With those. All right, thank you.
Yep, thank you. Tanya. You're welcome.
Good evening. We have a couple of things. Out of the state overnight is actually canceled, so I know that was in your agenda in your packet, but that's canceled. So we'll just flip through that. No action on that. And then the next one will be early graduation requests, and we have 4 total. 3 that are working full-time and 1 that's working to save for college. So that will be called for action. And then we have some camps. We want to get these approved if we are going to allow this. Again, this is kind of, we're progressing with what's going on with the IHSAA and where we're at with the COVID-19. So we're going to approve these, but they will be on the agenda in the sense, or on the same, if we close schools, they will be discontinued.
Well, so,
What's that?
Kind of on a standby.
Yeah.
but I noticed that the dates are pretty far out.
Yes, so it's May and June, and that's why they're on the agenda.
Okay.
It's, yeah. We learned yesterday it's a minute-by-minute action. And then the final one is the proposal of 3 swim coaches, because we are separating out the 3 swim teams.
Is that for next year?
This is for this August, yeah, this fall. And so that's up for action. Does anybody have any questions on that? Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
It's not much, but
It's not an increase. And they're still at ISU?
Yes.
Okay.
And so I have that in right now for approval. We put in for Holt and Reed Gym for next year, and graduation for next year.
already.
Yeah, ISU did email me today that everything is closed as of until May 15th, and then they'll get back with us.
And they've closed graduation.
Mhm.
Yeah.
They haven't closed ours yet, but yes. And I did go to the meeting, and I just want you to recognize that Judge Murray took time out and made a recognition to the school district for, I invited them to the restorative practices conferencing and so forth, and that was recognized at a state level, that we work hand in hand with them in providing professional development and things, so.
Oh,
That's good.
good, because I didn't get a note, so I didn't know. And I noticed in some of the bills, people going to the prevention conference in April, is that still on, or?
No, that was canceled. I think they canceled that last week. They was early on that one. Yeah. Okay, any other questions?
Business operations, Bart Reed.
Welcome back.
Thank you. Chairman Mattson, members of the board, and Superintendent Howell. Pleasure.
Were
to
you
be
out
with-
celebrating because it was the last plant facilities levy? you
I
had?
was. You have to celebrate when you can, right? All right, I will try to be brief on these remarks here. The Idaho General Fund Revenue Report for a little teeny month like February, $78 million ahead of revenues on that month, so that was great news. Overall, 3.6% ahead on state revenue, so things are looking good. I'm sure some folks are disappointed that they're not getting as much refunds back from the state as what they would like to get. So, item B is the eligibility percentages for free and reduced meals, sitting at about 43.7%, which isn't much of a change, but it's lower than what we have had in the past. One note that I would like to make in regard to food service, in regard to some of the recent changes that we've done with the emergency closure and so forth, is our food service program has quite a bit of perishable items that we keep on hand day by day. Today, the troops rallied together and we got everyone together and we donated all those products to the Idaho Food Bank. They would not make it more than 3 or 4 days. We had a fresh shipment of milk that came in today that could not go back, and also produce that came in. So all that went to the Idaho Food Bank, go out to needy families in our community, and that's the best use of those funds. So just for your information, that went out to them. It was around a little over $6,000 worth of produce and milk that went out. Item C is our state budget, and appreciate Renee kind of putting this together a little bit here so you can see that. I just want to draw attention to a few things. State general fund revenues were up $78 million over
It's in the
the current
addendum.
year's
Okay.
budget, about 4.2%.
Okay.
If you look there under federal revenues, you'll see about a $14 million increase in our federal resources. I think that has to do with some of the federal legislation and the Trump budget that he's putting forth there, and that is about a 5% decrease overall there. So we will see that reflected in the pass-through funds that come to us from the state for federal dollars. Overall, state revenues were about 2.9% up, so still another good year, but not quite as good as what we've seen in the last couple of years. On the expenditure side there, a number of things, if you want to bring that down just a little bit, Renee. Transportation took a fairly sizable hit in overall funds there, $7.7 million increase, or about a 10% increase overall in the budget. That's probably one of the largest transportation increases we have seen for quite some time. The next items were salary-based apportionment for administrators and classified. The state put in a little over $7 million for that, or about 3.5% increase there. And on the professional side, on the career ladder, there was about 4.3% that went in, or a little bit, about $38 million that went forth there. A lot of the other programs stayed relatively the same. I've highlighted the ones like leadership premiums, charter school facilities that went up almost 17%. One of the things that might be a little bit of a question under school facilities maintenance match, you'll see that the lottery funds went up about $1.3 million, or about 6% overall, and the school facilities maintenance match went down. The reason that went down is as lottery funds go up, the maintenance match requirements go down. So that's why you'll see that decrease there. Advanced opportunities, which there's been a lot of discussion about, went up $2 million, pretty sizable increase at 11%. And professional development went up about 4.6%, or another $1 million. On the bottom, one last thing I just want to draw your attention to is the distribution factor. That's our operating funds that we get. Only $471 more per funding unit, or 1.7% increase. And overall, that means about only $283,000 more for operational costs, to fund operational costs. That's kind of a pittance, if you will. That's a very meager amount there, especially with a supplemental levy that's fixed going into this next year. So we will deal with that as we go through the budget, but just want to let you know that's kind of the state picture going into this next year as we know it as of right now.
I noticed that they didn't put any in for the PSEP, though, the stabilization funds.
No, they did not. So,
Stabilization
all right.
funds.
If there are no questions, we'll move on to the bids. I'm not going to go through every single bid. They're outlined in your packet. I think that you've had an opportunity to review those. One thing that I would want to draw your attention to under our HVAC budget, which may come up as a question. We had two separate HVAC budgets. One was for Century High School, which came in significantly under budget. The other one was for Jefferson Elementary, which came in significantly over budget. The reason that came in over budget on Idaho was because there were some additional requirements from the city of Pocatello where we had to totally revamp the circulation system and the venting system in that school. So overall, between both of those budgets, if you will, we had $735,000 in our HVAC budget. Both of those projects came in at $709,850, so we're about $25,000 overall between those two projects. And so even though one was significantly over, we're recommending that both projects move forward and are approved for next year, or for this summer. Okay. All right, lastly, under item E is an easement from Idaho Power. We met with their representatives about 2 weeks ago up at Franklin Middle School. Right there on the, I guess it would be on the far northeast corner, right where it borders on Semiconductor. There's a transformer that sits right down there as you come down. I'm not sure what that street is when you come down, like off of, it's not Alvin Rickham, but from the hospital and down through that way. And then you can turn left to go up to on Semiconductor, or turn right going back to the west to go down like to Franklin or to ISU. Right, huh?
Hospital Way?
Hospital Way, probably, yes, thank you. Right at the end of that transformer sits right there in that spot, and they have had several cars that have slid down that road, could not stop, slid through traffic, and hit that transformer twice, and it's very costly to repair that. They are suggesting that be moved over in that northeast corner. Part of that property is on Semiconductor, and part of it is ours, and so this easement would allow Idaho Power to draw their lines across a small portion of our property over to on Semiconductor, which they would get an easement from them and relocate that transformer. So we would recommend approval of that easement. It does not take away from any property that we really have that would be in any usable fashion. So that's our recommendation on that item there.
Did I read that some of that would be undergrounded?
That what?
Some of what they were gonna do would be put underground?
It will be all underground, except for the actual transformer itself will be, part of it will be vaulted underneath and part of it will extend above the ground. So, more of a safety consideration. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Employee Services, Carl Smart.
All right, 3 small items in my section of the agenda tonight. Infinite Campus, we always like to report on our IC, and it is out the door as of yesterday, last night. So we were able to get out the door before we all had to leave last night. Just to let you know as well, we mentioned here in the last 2 or 3 months about our E-rate and getting a new contractor for our wide area network. They are beginning to start their work in the schools and attaching that new network to our wide area, to our schools. And so they are beginning that process now. So over the course of the summer, they'll be doing that. Well, right now, actually, with the next 3 weeks, they can really get some work done because there's nobody there to obstruct their work. So anyway, those are the 2 big things we have for the campus. In your packet is student enrollment information. There was an oddity this month where we went up from the month of, we're in January, went up to, the enrollment went up in February, but dropped back down a little bit in March, which is a little odd. So I don't know what that really means, but if you were to look at the data, it was just a little oddity that I didn't happen to notice. That enrollment information that you got that you have in your packet.
Not very many.
And the last thing I just want to mention is our wellness dashboard. As you can see, we had some pretty good experience in the month of January. Not as great in February, but still good. And so that's the good news. We were notified over the last couple of weeks that there's going to be a large claim come through. We know what it is, but I won't share that with you. But it could impact it. But when they look at large claims, they look at it in anticipation. Will that large claim continue on into the future? What we do know about this large claim is this employee is not going to be working for us next year, so it won't be a large claim forever. So that's the good news. And but we haven't seen any sort of indication in our data yet that it's even having a big impact. And so that was their concern, and I don't think it's going to be much of a concern when it's all said and done. But we are anticipating that when we get back from our emergency closure in the month of April, that we will have preliminary renewal number for most of our plans. And so we will be able to share that with you in the month of April. Typically, this is the time of year we're working with them, and of course, we're going to be kind of hit and miss with our carriers and Lockton, and so hopefully we'll be able to connect with them before, 2 weeks are over and see how it all transpired. But we will be sharing that data with you sometime in the month of April. And with that concludes my report, unless you have questions or comments. Good night.
Thank you.
Okay.
Human Resources, Brenda.
Good evening. I'm here to just discuss policy and procedures 7207 and 7208, and this is for first reading. And the purpose of this, if you look at it on your attachment, is it's more of just a cleanup in nature. There wasn't very many changes to it. If you look at it, it's just making sure that the policy and the procedure match and that the numbers correlate. And then there's a few little d's made to big D's for the district, and that is pretty much the extent.
I just hoped it wasn't something coming up that you.
Made you kind of nervous.
Who brought this to your attention?
Huh?
Who brought this to your attention?
Who brought this one to my attention?
Yeah, were you
Sue.
looking for it?
No, I wasn't. Sue Pettit brought it to my attention and just thought that maybe this would be something that we just watch for and, clean this one up in case something were to come up, but there was no, yeah.
Did you hear from the state?
No, good question.
I just remember dealing with this.
Made you nervous.
Of all of the
And that's what Ms. Johnson and I said today, that this is kind of a nervous one to show up on here, but it actually came up quite a while ago, and we were just cleaning up the language. Okay? Any questions?
I saw that. Okay, superintendent report.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Board members, I'm just really pulling some information directly from Capital Notes, which I'm sure you've all had a chance to look through. And typically, I'm a little bit better about staying up on that on a daily basis, but I must admit,
Nothing else on your plate right now.
yeah, we've had a few other things going on, so it's hard to keep up. But even last week, I was still writing legislators. I sent one to Mortimer.
Yep, we saw it, thank you.
Yeah. So that one, I couldn't let that one slip past me because that's important. And we see here that it should be dead for the year. It doesn't look like it's coming out of the drawer. That is on the election dates, both.
Oh, good.
Yeah, both of them in regard to holding it in primary and general elections only, and then the bond elections being only once a year. So both of those appear to be off the table. Yeah, and so we're in a good place with that. Quinn reports in the ISBA recap that very successful on several bills that came from the resolutions of the ISBA conventions, and one was on excision. Another one on the increased reimbursement for driver's training. That one went relatively quickly and easily. The governor's career ladder and funding, so we were happy to see that we just added more to that. And then the CTE placement on the career ladder. I think what we would like to see pursued eventually is for ancillary staff, including SLPs and OTs and nurses. If we could do something very similar in the coming years, that would be beneficial to count their experience and not just after they receive a teaching credential. So I think that's one area we could continue to focus on. And I think that was brought up previously, not this past year, but maybe the year before.
I can't remember. I don't remember.
And so,
But it's probably, if it's, not in that current list, then writing a piece of,
you bet,
We'll
we'll do it if somebody else has it. I think that's very
Maybe
important.
need to make a note to make that recommendation.
they have to be done in.
Yeah, I think it's July. Yeah, okay.
Okay.
Okay, yeah. So in that next section, the guns on school campuses, oh, thank goodness that's out of the way. Not have to worry about that. And then again, the election dates and the bond elections once a year. Sexuality education, public school funding formula, that kind of went away. And then the school year start date. Remember that proposal to start after Labor Day?
Oh, that went away.
Yes, it did. Yes. And then still waiting to see what happens with the ban on transgender girls in athletics. I did see that passed the Senate as well, so it will go to the governor.
Hope he vetoes it.
Yeah, we'll see what he does with it, so.
Well, I mean, the two transgender bills that they passed are both against law that's in place.
Yeah, contrary to,
And so they would have to be litigated at a pretty high cost.
and I think Representative Buckner Webb, or Senator, and Senator Ward Engelking, they were both opposed and brought up those very points in the discussion on the Senate, and it still passed.
What
So-
about the property tax one, right?
You know, I didn't see that in this report. I'll follow up and send you an email.
I just know that's a big thing for all the cities,
Uh-huh,
you know?
right, yeah.
I just was wondering, that's pretty impactful for them, so.
So, bills that are still hanging out there that ISBA was neutral on was superintendent evaluations. You'll remember they talked about that when we went over for a day on the Hill, as well as the mandatory school board training. That did pass the Senate in both cases, and it's in the House. I don't know if they're going to get to either one of those before they adjourn for the year. So it may just sit there until next year and somebody else brings it up. And I think those are pretty much the ones that apply that I wanted to share with you today. Yeah. That's it. Okay.
Okay, that's time for action items.
Oh, board calendar.
wait,
If we're good, we'll just run right through it. On the addendum, yeah, what calendar? Well, at least for the next 3 weeks, that, the balance of this week, spring break, and then that following week, we will ask you to come in, like I said, that week of the 30th at some point. We'll get you scheduled, and once we have a better direction and, are able to reevaluate and all of the
Go to the
developments
addendum.
at that point in time that may be happening in relation to the virus, then we'll go from there. But, so, I don't even know where to pick up. Let me keep scrolling here. Renee, where do we pick up in April sometime?
Yeah, it's way down.
Yeah, so
Our
we canceled
school
some
visits were
school
canceled.
visits, we canceled
School visits
everything.
were canceled.
The seminar, yeah. So we're showing, potentially on the 15th. Oh, so let's see, no, 14th. So the 10th, it looks like when we're picking up potentially, local issues committee. And then the 14th of April would be Judge Murray's Juvenile Justice Committee. Work session, which I think we have an action item on the next section of mine, or is it under this one, Renee?
You're next. There's an amended board meeting schedule, the next topic.
Okay, so it's the next one, but you'll just take note of it here, is that with the cancellation of the AJH conference, that we could bring a work session back in, and then that wouldn't load you up for May. And then the other item that I would speak to will be a change of student hearings. If we could start those at 4:30, if you'd be interested in doing that rather than, did I say 4:30?
Yeah.
3:30 instead of 4:30.
Yeah.
Apologize, a little rummy here. Yeah, so, and then regular board meeting on the 21st. And then you'll see, we'll shoot out a little bit further into the 22nd of April, 23rd, and you can just pick it up from there. But that takes us about a month out.
I did
What's
note that I'm listed as part of the curriculum committee, and I think Dave is taking my spot.
And I was there last.
I know you were,
Yeah.
but in April, my
Okay,
name
so
is on
we'll
there.
Fix those on the calendar then.
Okay,
all those ones that-
yeah, I can't
I've
get
got
back.
noted in my committee list, but probably on the calendar.
Yeah, okay.
So on April 22nd, this promise of Pocatello mayoral scholarship reception,
Well,
is that new? That's new to me, I mean.
yeah, that would be new. Yeah, if it's held.
Well,
Yeah.
ISU has already said nothing, so.
Oh, that's right, until the.
So I would assume that
Middle of May.
if they're gonna do it, it'll have to be someplace else.
I'm kind of going in and putting cancel on stuff as I get word of it, so if that was at ISU, I'll note that as canceled if they're.
Okay, all right.
And so I guess all of our graduation things are up in arms as far as the dinners go and like high honors graduation and all of
Yeah,
the high honors events.
Yeah, Mrs. Pettit did send out an email, I think in the last 2 weeks or so, or 3 weeks. And the principals, the high school principals, had asked about your interest in attending
Right,
their, yeah. So that would take the place,
of the other. and-
yeah,
But that might not even happen.
exactly, right. So
Okay.
instead of having like highest honors reception, we would just do them
It's luncheons.
luncheons with the school and the
Yeah.
students.
Yeah,
Or at the school with the students. Uh-huh.
yeah.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, my third item was just that change in the board meeting schedule, as well as a change in the time for works, or for student hearings. And that was the third item.
Okay,
Okay, thank you.
and then public comment, there is no public, so we'll move forward.
Sorry, Carl, I have,
No,
rec-
no, you have
I
to be here, buddy.
recognize you out there.
But you have to be here. Let's move on to action items. The first item is for business is to approve the submission of the Head Start grant application and selection criteria pending completion.
I hereby move that the board approve the submission of a Head Start grant application and selection.
I'll second,
Okay.
Pending completion.
whatever he said, I'll
Any
second.
discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Say aye. Aye. Hearing none opposed, that motion is passed. The next item of business is the Head Start waivers for the 2021 school year, including the transportation waiver, non-federal share waiver, and the budget and carryover revision waiver. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the Head Start waivers for the 2020-2021 school year.
I'll approve that, or second.
Second, okay. All
I'll
those in,
approve it too.
all those in
All by
favor?
yourself.
Assume kind of a mantle of authority.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion is passed. The next item of business is to approve the PCCS petition to the Idaho Public Charter School Commission to seek a new authorizer. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the PCCS petition to seek a new authorizer to the Idaho Public Charter School Commission.
I'll second that.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Hearing none opposed, that motion is passed. This one, there is no action, so do I even have to put it in, say anything? Okay.
No.
Next item is to approve the early graduation requests.
I move that we approve the early graduation request.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Hearing none, that motion is passed. Next item of business is to approve the camp requests. It's a big if.
I move that the board approve the camp request as presented.
I second that, pending.
Yeah.
Pending for-
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. That motion is passed. Next item of business is to award the following bids.
No,
Oh,
approve
right,
it.
it does.
Swimming.
Oh, the swimming coaches, excuse me. Got ahead of myself. To approve the additional swimming coaches. Is there a motion?
I move we approve the additional swimming coaches.
Okay,
I'll second.
okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Aye. That motion is passed. Now it's time to award the bids. Buses, carpet, gym floor replacement at Highland, HVAC at Century and Idaho, and then that tile, DCT tile. Is there a motion?
I move that we award the bids.
Okay, second.
I'll second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Hearing none opposed, the motion is passed. Next item is to grant the permanent easement request from Idaho Power. Is there a motion?
I move that we approve the permit easement request from Idaho Power.
I'll second.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion is passed, and the last is to adopt the amended 2021 board meeting schedule.
I move that we hear on first reading.
Yeah.
First reading, sorry.
Okay. You put it in there correctly, and we did. Is there a motion?
I move,
That we
Yeah.
just hear it on first reading.
yeah.
Okay,
Second that, I guess.
all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Done.
I move that we adopt the amended 2020-2021 board meeting schedule.
Okay,
I'll second it.
okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
I move that we adjourn.
I'll second that.
Great. I'll second it. All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay, that motion is passed, and we are adjourned.
Woo-hoo.
Nice for us your outline.
Yes, you did. Got it done in record time.
Not too shabby, I'll say
Record
that.
time.